Welcome back to How China Works. I'm Brendan Davis, your co-host. My partner in crime, Yingying will be with us very shortly as we interview Gordon DUMOULIN. And Gordon is a very interesting guy. He has several things going on. He's been in China for about a dozen years, a little bit longer than that. And he has three main areas of focus we talk about in this interview today. He has a strong, passionate interest in herbs, and that overlaps, of course, with Chinese medicine, but it's actually even bigger than that. He also writes about China and writes about understanding the culture, understanding the world by way of a lens that encompasses this. And he's also an educator. And along with his wife, they run a school that is expanding and is very successful. It was a really great talk, and we're proud to present it. Don't forget to visit howchinaworkspodcast.com to find out more about Gordon and our other show guests. But for now, please enjoy our conversation with Gordon DUMOULIN. Welcome back to How China Works. I'm Brendan Davis. I'm here with my awesome co-host, Yingying Li. How are you, Yingying?
Doing great.
Fantastic. And we're here with Gordon DUMOULIN. How's that as a pronunciation? Is that respectable?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, you have a really eclectic background and a lot of interests, and we could probably do a week of shows with you. But for now, let's maybe focus it a little bit better. Please tell us a little bit about where you're from and your interests in China and what you're kind of focused on.
Okay, I've been living in China for 10 years, actually in Beijing for 10 years since the end of 2009. And I'm originally from Holland, the beautiful oldest city of Holland, Maastricht.
Okay.
So almost practically French. So that's why my last name is DUMOULIN,
Right.
French name. So yes, and I've been living actually very happily since 2009 in Beijing.
Fantastic.
Well, we learned that you have several interesting ventures here in Beijing or in China overall, including like dealing with Chinese traditional medicine and education, and your interesting blog, Five Eyes About China, 5eyes.com, right? So we've seen something that like you observe and you trying to share are quite connected with our audience on how China works.
Seems like a lot of overlap here.
Yeah,
you deal with tradition as well as looking toward the future, which is part of why I think it's a good fit to chat.
Yes.
Yeah, if people follow your LinkedIn post, they'll find that you write regularly about the Chinese traditional culture. A lot of manifested in elaborating on the Chinese food. So let's start with that kind of understanding. Since when you started to develop that interest?
Yes, it's by accident a little. My background was before I came to China, I was working in the food industry.
Okay.
Food packaging and other kind of processing machineries. And in 2009, I decided to have a different, actually a new start in life. So I came to China for by invitation by a company, and that was for 6 months. And some people were asking me from the old times, asking me about ingredients for food.
Okay.
And especially natural ingredients. So actually, I didn't have any background in ingredients and also in herbs, but people were asking, and actually, I decided literally to jump in and started to register a company in Beijing and focusing on natural ingredients in general.
So what has impressed you most about this particular area, like while you were discovering and later writing about it?
Well, the first step was, of course, I wanted to make a base in China. So whether it was natural ingredients or some other experience or making a life, I start to make a new base. And the natural ingredients actually came first to me because people were asking about it. And then more and more people were also asking about medicinal herbs, traditional herbs. People call it TCM, traditional Chinese herbs, but in general, it's actually medicinal herbs, which are growing all over the world. People were asking, so I had to study because I didn't have any background. So I started to study, I started to look around, and most importantly, I started to contact people in China, companies in China who were dealing and who are doing business in herbs.
Yeah, for example, what kind of company?
Oh, these are farms. Actually, the first year in 2010, 2011, I think I spent 50% of the time in night trains, going to different provinces,
all right.
visiting farms, actually very big farms, cultivations, but also extraction companies who are doing plant extracts.
Where are those places
are they
most
in one
located?
area? Are they all over the country?
You have centers in Shanxi.
Oh, Shanxi.
With Xi'an as a
Oh,
capital,
Xi'an.
Hunan.
Oh, Shanxi you're talking about, right?
Shanxi.
Shanxi. Okay.
Dongbei, northeast of China.
Wow.
Ginseng, for example. Most
Ginseng,
people know
yeah.
the ginseng root, the king of the herbs.
Renshen in Chinese.
Yes. And the location for ginseng is Jilin. Jilin
Jilin.
is
Okay.
actually
They have
just
very
north
good
of
ones.
North Korea. The how you call it in English? The foot of the Changbaishan.
Oh, 长白山脚下.
Yes, it's the holy mountain for the Koreans.
Okay.
It's the border split
So you
between
went there.
China.
Yeah, because China kind
I
of
was
wraps
there
around North
regularly.
Korea.
Usually, I every year. Actually, this month is the harvest of the ginseng.
Oh, you know so much about the Chinese farms and Chinese.
Well, I guess you have to know when they're
herbs.
coming out of the ground to know when you can take things to
otherwise
market
you
or get
miss
the
them.
fresh ones, right?
Yes, otherwise you miss them.
Yeah, what do you find yourself gain most out of this experience? What do you gain most?
Like,
Of course, first of all, it's I don't consider it work, but you have to do something in life to get bread on the table
You
and a
enjoy.
roof on the head.
so it's a good business.
But to get business. But I started really to love this business because it's not only about the herbs, but it's a good thing. Natural herbs, natural health brings good things to the people. So it's this is one thing, but this is not only in China. Many people
Around
in
the
the
world.
States, in
Yeah.
Europe, people
Natural food,
natural
stuff.
foods, organic foods.
It's a trend,
It's a
right?
trend. It's actually it has
Well, it's-
always been there.
it's always been a trend.
Yes.
People love
It's
natural
amazing.
stuff.
Well, actually,
Is
it
that a
was
country-
there,
it's not
and
anymore?
people started to realize, and it's coming back.
Nice.
Yeah. What are the challenges in this particular industry in like helping people to get natural ingredients or for example, like your business?
No, actually, the business is first of all because mostly I'm exporting, so most of the herbs or extraction of herbs, or powders of herbs, they are used mostly in the West as supplements, or they are used in natural cosmetics. Supplements have had or are still growing very much in the Western world. People are taking not only vitamins, but for sleeping or for focus and all these kind of things. And but actually, more interesting later is that you also start to learn about the role of herbs in TCM, traditional Chinese medicine. And then you start also to learn that, for example, in the West, herbs are often treated individually. And
it's the synergetic effects is really where the magic is, right?
Yes. In China, you have many. I'm not an expert in this, but an amateur, and a passionate amateur. But it's indeed it's a whole approach, and that you see back in the TCM, and then you also start to think how this concept actually of thinking is also coming back in many ways and in many different ways in Chinese society.
And have you seen that in your own? You were starting to talk about that it's obviously that it's a good business and provides a service, but in your own body, your own self, have you? Since you've always been involved with herbs for a long time. You're saying, but have you really found that you've refined, fine-tuned your own regimen of how you take? Do you take things for maintenance and general improvement as well as for when you have a cold or something? Or
I do. I take my ginger and licorice, which I brew once a week.
Okay, is that like a daily sip that you have?
Yeah,
is it
a daily night sip.
Okay.
Like a coffee.
If I had a good day, it will be without the vodka. If it has been a bad day, there will be a little more.
So just a little shot if you.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
No, but
so the vodka is a present. Vodka is a constant. The level fluctuates.
Yes. But it's more about. It's not about taking those herbs and then see what is the effect, but it's more about thinking about food and health.
Right.
And that you see also much more in China, that food is treated as a health product. It's not a product; it's a health concept. You see this in many ways back in the Chinese kitchen.
Sure,
Or the Chinese dishes.
like the concept of hot and cold, and we don't mean to the purely Western audience, not temperature hot and temperature cold, but things that have heat or have cold or induce these effects.
Yes.
And so if you have something this thing wrong with you, you want to avoid a whole category of things.
Yes.
And embrace the other category of things.
Yes.
Like to try to counterbalance it.
Yes.
It seems to be that balance is a recurring theme.
Well, balance and seeing things as a whole.
Right.
I mean,
like a holistic.
Maybe if you have pain in your left toe, maybe it's a problem with your ear.
Yeah.
I mean, but this is different thinking.
Sure.
But also in the food, I mean, you see many people, and each region in China have their own traditions. But for example, here in the north, you see a lot that, for example, especially in wintertime when the radish is coming, and they are, how you call that, putting it in the ground to keep it.
Oh, okay.
Storage thing?
Yeah, like a storage.
Yeah,
but they always eat it after dinner. And the
like
first
a
time,
dessert or something.
yes, it's like a dessert, but it's not a nice dessert. I mean, but I like it.
The
but
preserved
it's not.
one.
But also the fresh ones. But why they do that?
Yeah.
And also why do Chinese people start to eat seeds?
Why do they do that?
Yeah.
Because of the digestion.
Yeah. Okay.
There are substances in radish as well as in seeds which are prebiotics. And prebiotics are actually the food of the probiotics, and the probiotics are bacteria which make your digestion work.
Helps to create a healthy gut.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's...
Is there a cause and effect?
Yeah, it's a cause and effect. And even, I think most Chinese people would also not be very much aware of it. But there's just a dish of radish on the table after you finish your meal. But it's a tradition of...
It came from something. It's become like a cultural trope, but it comes from something that's actually...
It comes from, from knowledge, from wisdom.
Right.
It comes from knowledge and wisdom. And there are many ways, like Chinese dates, you eat often before eating, because it fills you up. You feel full.
Okay.
So you don't eat too much.
Nice.
So there are many, there are so many examples of why people eat what and when they eat it. After meal, before meal.
That's why I drink a giant yogurt drink before I go to like the baijiu soaked dinner, because it helps prevent some of the absorption of the baijiu.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I like the way that how proactive you are in finding the correlation and making sense of the food, the herbs. So can you share with us one example that could help explain maybe the misunderstanding part of certain herbs for people outside of China who actually does not live in this culture and understand that much?
I think it's actually more it's not a misconception. It's the attitude towards TCM in the West. And I think for many,
which admittedly is fairly negative sometimes.
Yes, it's like a mystery. It's like a little witchy. But actually, if you look at here in China, and TCM is not only herbs. You have many. You have treatments, acupuncture, and many other treatments, analysis. But if, for example, if you look at the herbs, here people are most pragmatic. So it's not also about the herbs. It's not a mystic thing.
Yeah,
it's just a part of. In Holland,
it's like a part of a system.
We drink milk in the morning in Holland, and so the image what TCM has, and especially the herbs in Western societies, is very different from the image what it has here. And secondly, you have of course the scientific issue of TCM. TCM often has doesn't have the necessary scientific proof,
right?
Which the Western pharmaceutical world expects,
right?
And this makes it hard. So it's not only about the herbs; it's actually about the total approach and the differences therein. What makes it different?
Yeah.
But a very good example is actually it's a sweet wormwood. It's one herb. Which is a medicine for malaria. It has been ignored. It was found in China by, what's her name? Yao Yao, I think. But I'm not sure anymore. She was a scientist, and she did that actually in the old Vietnam War. She had a cure for malaria, sweet wormwood, which is a herb. And it helped. It worked. Only 30 years later, it was accepted by the Western society. And I think she got the Nobel Prize in 2005. But it was discovered in the 70s.
Wow.
Difference of approaches makes also many misunderstandings. And also, there are many opportunities to be lost.
Right.
So this is coming again to the culture.
Right. Speaking of the culture, what do you find is the biggest connection between the herbs and the natural ingredients here in China most people actually use and observe with culture? Like how much you attach the culture element into this?
I think when you see not only herbs, but how people treat health, natural health, it's an element, it's actually a holistic approach. With a W, and not holy, but holy.
Right.
Holy
right.
W.
With a W. So, and this is also coming back in so many ways in culture. Whether you are talking, whether I'm in my family, whether I'm doing business, whether you're on the street, whether you're in the subway, there are always so many elements which you all have to take into consideration.
Could
Much
you
more.
give us an example?
For example, I've been also for the herbs. I've been consulting different companies, Chinese companies, and these are medium, large size, but mostly family manufacturers. And I did consulting in different aspects, either engineering or production. And so I stayed in Hunan for 1 year, and I also worked with different companies. And it was always very important to get everybody on board. All the disciplines get on board. It's the end of the day, and it's also I wouldn't say, it's a play between brackets in a positive sense, and that you also have to sometimes you can be angry or you can be strong, but never forget to get everybody on board at the end of the day. Everything is important.
Well, this actually dovetails into the sort of the second thing you're talking about, which is education, and the fact that you have to educate people, and you have to also become educated about how you deal with differences in culture, status, motivations. How did you get into that as a piece of your life?
Very pragmatic.
Okay.
I started in 2010 with herbs. Honestly, with a small budget, and I had a partner who is today my wife, a business partner, and financially it was a little struggle.
Did it take time to grow?
It takes time.
Hey, see what I did there?
But it was
grow the herbs. See, grow.
It was the best time of my life.
Nice.
It was, and she said after 1 year, she said. I have 2 students in our floor, and we were having an office in Tungzhou, in the east of Beijing, dealing with the herbs and focusing on the herbs. And she said, we have 2 children here on the floor. They want to learn English. Can you teach them? And I said, I didn't learn from this, and I don't know how to do. I don't.
Yeah.
So it was also a Western mindset. Do what you're good at, what you studied in.
Right.
And she was very practical. And she showed me our figures.
Okay.
It was rather red at the bottom. And then I said, "You have a point."
Okay. Oh, right. Yeah, showing you the bottom line, showing you where you were with your burden.
To the point.
She asked me, "You still want to pay me?"
With your burgeoning herb empire.
Yes. So no. But then it was. So I said, "Okay. We'll try it." And she's a teacher, English teacher.
Okay.
And her passion is school, is education. So I said, okay, we started with 2 kids in 2010. And now we have, I think, 120 kids or something. Wow. Just moved to a new new school.
We know that you got the whole new thing going on now.
Yes.
That's pretty exciting.
It's very exciting. Yes.
Yeah.
It's also fun, I mean, you are from Monday to Friday, actually you are working with full passion on the herbs. But Friday night, Saturday morning, the kids are coming to school for me, and I teach also in the weekends.
Okay.
It is so good for me because I turn the key. Because when you are busy with kids,
that's got to help you
everything
switch
is
off.
gone. Everything is gone. You have no time. You have no energy to think about anything else.
So you engage with the kids. You also engage with their parents, I assume, right?
Yes.
What are the things you learned? Or what are the biggest impressions that you have from working with them?
The biggest impression is that families are everywhere the same in the world.
Okay.
And it's everywhere. The accents might be a little different, but the
you see how they deeply love and care about their children.
Yes,
and
they do, and they do everything what they can to. What I like, if you talk a little about differences, but there are more similarities.
Sure.
But talk about differences is that parents are really there for their kids. They really want to give any opportunity to their kids to grow. Not only grow in really pure education, but grow in personality and grow in as a human being. And this is and therefore also a lot of private educations exist in China,
right?
Because parents want this for their kids, and if the finance allows them, they do it. Another thing is that I think, but I'm not sure. Because I didn't grow in those times. But I think, on the other hand, China has had rough times in the past.
Sure.
And you see, in many ways, the difference that in Western world, many people see, especially smaller children now, as the kings and the queens, and they how do you say that?
Spoiled
brats.
Spoiled brat.
But especially by the grandparents, you see those generation gaps. But if you look back at the and I cannot imagine. I just can make it visualize maybe, but I cannot imagine what those grandparents have gone through.
I say this all the time because there are a lot of people. There are a lot of there's a big range of people in my compound here, but there are a fair amount of older folks who I guess their kids, or even in some cases their grandkids, have put them up here.
Yes.
As a retirement thing, and just like the character. Like anybody like 60 plus has just seen unimaginable stuff and development and good and bad and everything.
Yes, good and bad, and not only bad.
Sure, exactly.
But they have had a very dynamic life and gone through so many stages, of environment.
Right.
But it also means that those grandparents, they wish nothing more through their hardships that their grandkids have everything.
Because it's still tangible to them. The hardships are really tangible and personal.
And they want everything. So if you look from their eyes, it's very well understandable. Mm-hmm. And then there is the generation in between, those parents.
Yeah.
And this is...
I wish I could read your face a little better.
Sorry.
There's a lot in your reaction.
Yeah.
And then there's those parents, and I couldn't even describe it.
But there's
it's probably everything in between there too.
Yes, and they have to handle both sides.
I can imagine.
So speaking of that, I'm very curious to learn your understanding about this family culture. Obviously, we mentioned a lot in our podcast about parenting, education, but we are more and more curious to learn. I mean, our audience are curious to learn about this attachment for an individual Chinese person with the whole family, with the whole country, and how do you understand about it, living with that kind of community and see them engaging with their own family and even the society and the whole country, the whole nation. Like, is there anything you can elaborate on that, like your understanding about the Chinese attachment to this
their own environments, actually?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say that's very different.
It's very complicated. Yeah. It's very First, when just the last thing about those kids and those parents, very funny is that sometimes the parents they come to my wife because she's also running the school. She's always there, even I'm teaching. I say, "Can you ask Gordon how I can treat those kids?" Because sometimes for me, a class is a class, a group is a group.
Yeah.
If somebody is disturbing the class too much, he's out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, the parents sometimes say, wow, I wish I can do that. Can you ask Gordon how he can do that? And these are questions. I'm not how you call that,
Like a disciplinarian?
A psychologist for children.
Okay. Sure.
I'm not that.
Sure.
I'm just a simple person, a simple teacher.
Your principle is that, okay, if
the
you
class should
follow
run
the
well,
rules,
and the kids should have fun. And if somebody's disturbing,
If somebody's ruining
They're
everybody
out.
else, and they can't be corrected,
he does it for the
they
second or
gotta-
third
they
time,
gotta go,
and then
yeah.
he has to sit 5 minutes outside.
So from
And
your
then you
understanding,
get
what,
praise.
And so
what
they're
was the
asking how to-
question about, really? What really
They
is the question about?
maybe they don't dare, or they are afraid for their kids,
Yeah.
or but this is too much.
Complicated.
Yes, but for me, it's very. People try to find an explanation, but on the other hand, families are individual anyway.
Well, I at the risk of, let me say every caveat of me not being in a position to accurately judge, but I just I'm going to throw this out there and ask you, and also Yingying as an actual Chinese person. For me, my take on it, and from what I've read as well, and it stands to reason to a degree, but what do you think about this? For me, the evolution, other people have put this in a more succinct way than I am right now, but basically every 10 years is like a whole new generational change.
Yes.
And so those people in the middle, it's like so much has changed. Even if they're in their mid-20s and they've got like a young kid, there have been like 2 whole cycles of evolution of society just since they were the little kid, and then they're hearing from their parents, well, like basically, here's how I raised you, what are you doing with little so-and-so. So, do you think that it's just they just don't have a frame of reference? There's not because the accelerator. Here's what I'm trying to say succinctly is that the changes have been at such a fast pace. The acceleration, the rate of change has outpaced the ability for people to comprehend how to have a continuity and how to act here. Does any of that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
I'd like to think there's a coherent point in there. Does that seem?
Makes sense. It makes sense, and not only to the children, but to your own.
Right.
As an adult or as a parent, but even as a normal adult, you always have to invent yourself again.
Yeah.
And coming back to your question, for how I see it, I'm living in a complete Chinese environment. When people tell me I'm an expat, I'm not an expat. I'm an immigrant.
Okay. Yeah.
So. But you see the people around you, and I'm also married to a Chinese lady, and practically I have only Chinese friends.
Yeah.
So you see everybody in their own life, and you're also trying to analyze. But one thing I learned: don't analyze too much. That's what I learned in China.
Okay.
I analyzed. Western people like to analyze a lot with clear conclusions, but it makes no sense. And actually, it also doesn't make too much sense often in Chinese society, in Western.
Why do you
society.
think? Why do you think that is in both cases?
No, in Chinese society, it making sense of the analysis because tomorrow things are changing again, and it's also an approach how people look at life, subconscious. It's not like a book or something, but I feel it's a little more light here. It's not as maybe as heavy as in Europe, but that's just what I feel sometimes.
Yeah, I noticed that you have an article about the sustainability development here in China, which is about this Green China initiative, which I assume that it connected with your herb and natural ingredients initiatives. Overall growing your understanding about the development of this area in China. So what do you observe, during these 10 years living in China, mostly in Beijing, right? Like, what is your biggest observation when it comes to how China has changed in terms of turning China a greener China? We see this in the headlines about China every day. But your personal experience, your personal observation and engagement, even in some of your posts, you write about like this sustainability. What's your view about it?
Yeah, you've been here for a whole one of those cycles we were just talking about.
Just go outside and breathe.
Right. You can now.
10 years,
you can now, right?
10 years ago, it was a different story. Or even look outside. No,
So you're quite happy here right now?
Of course. No, I mean what I like, and it's not, in generally every society and every big society, you have your pros and cons. But especially in sustainability, in the actions what are actually being taken in pollution, or actually prevention of pollution, green electricity, and it's just actually about reading. It's about a message. The information is out there. The information is out there, but it's not to be read, especially by outside China. So it's a thing that, many times when I go back to Europe, once a year or twice a year, the first thing people ask me, and how's the pollution of the air pollution? I say there is no air. There hasn't been air pollution this summer.
Yeah.
1 or 2 days. I don't think I didn't measure, and I don't know, but related to London.
You don't
or
have
Paris,
a little egg out there trying to read the air.
But you feel good, and you see the developments in this. And when you are interested in this, you also start to read more, and you try to find more information about this. And because I think it's important to not only about sustainability, but about getting objective information out, which is not easy.
Right.
I think media is, even you translate something in a different language, you already have a tone, or even you use one word, people get a feeling. So it's not easy, but trying to get other sides, simple sides, from daily life, simple sides from China out.
Well, is this what motivated, and that brings us, Yingying brought us into the third aspect of your focus for this conversation anyway, but you're publishing, you're writing, and you're sharing your thoughts, sharing your vision. What sort of motivated that? How did you get into that? Did you just feel like you were learning so much that you had to share? I mean, was that, what sort of compelled you to start with the sharing?
Yeah, 5 eyes. Yes.
Why 5 eyes?
Yeah, because I know what the 5 eyes means in a Western context. Is this a play on that, or is this?
No, it wasn't. Actually, it wasn't, but somebody told me.
Okay, well, what does 5 eyes mean to you?
5 eyes is actually, you have 5 directions in China.
Okay.
Whatever there is, and you have northwest, east, south. But you always have the center in China.
What you're trying to elaborate is the culture of 5. Number 5.
And number 5 comes back in many ways.
Sure.
And many ways come.
For example?
You have 5 sacred mountains. And you have...
Are there 5 elements, I assume?
You have the 5 ingredients. You have ginseng, and you have the... How you call it?
Well, I'm saying elements here.
Yeah. Five is a key.
Yeah, so you have...
We're on the third floor right now for those playing the home game. There's no connection. I just like that fact.
No, but for me, it was actually the center. For me, it's a center.
Yeah.
There's such a strong... there's something strong in Chinese people, also in China. People can wander, and Chinese people wander everywhere in the world.
Sure.
They have been emigrated since 100, 200 years.
I think the biggest travelers of all people.
But China is the center. People, even I've been living in Southeast Asia for a couple of years also in the past. And many Chinese people also, from origin. Chinese people are also there. They have never been to China. But it's their motherland.
You have the strong
but they're living in like
generations
Malaysia
ago.
or other places.
Like Malaysia, Singapore. And even some bought a grave.
Wow.
They bought a grave
like in the
when
other...
they died. They bought a grave in China in their hometown. Even they have never been in their own country.
Wow.
Right. This is such a strong culture. You already point out the heart, maybe, of this element, which is Zhong. Like where I come from, is called Zhongyuan, the middle of China, in the Middle Kingdom, which is Zhong are also the biggest, how to say the dialect. The biggest word in our dialect is Zhong, which means yes and good and everything like this.
You hear that word
agreeing
a lot.
on that. Yes. Zhong. Yeah. And it means a lot for Chinese people, like China called 中国, right?
Yes,
in the middle. And I'm sure this culture actually has been so strongly influencing us, everybody, like for 1,000 years. And you also mentioned about grave, right? Buying a or coffin.
Yeah.
This kind of thing
not the
before
coffin,
you
but,
die.
Bang the dirt.
You buy
Your own
your,
piece of
your
dirt
2 square
to lay your
meters.
bones, yeah.
Did you encounter this kind of thing in China? Like Chinese people buying a before?
No, I didn't personally. No, I heard people say that when
Yeah.
I was in Southeast Asia.
In China?
No, I didn't
No.
hear because mostly in Beijing and in Beijing,
Well, I would
Beijing
say-
people are
I would
cremated,
say-
and this is the law.
Okay.
Even outside Beijing, it's
Oh,
yes, because
yeah,
there's
no.
no place.
Right.
There's no place.
I would
to
say we
bury
mentioned
people.
about China's huge
didn't know.
5-6 different layers of tiers of cities in a smaller tier cities.
Yes.
People really think it's something big in their life.
Do they
like,
still
like in
do the
Chinese, we
burial
say 生老病死. 生 means to born, and 老 means to be old, and 病 means to be ill, to be sick, and 死 means death. Are the 4 major thing in people's life.
Yes.
And while people are still alive, for example, our parents, our grandfather, grandparents, they think about this all the time, like where I will be buried. And a lot of time, this is some major family stuff also unite the family. You're talking about the Chinese people are so much family oriented, and one of the elements to unify or to connect them is the direction of death. When I say that, is like where to bury, and they want to be buried together. So generally speaking, all the family have this tradition. Okay, for example, my grandfather buried in somewhere which have feng shui, right? Which have some cultural elements of feng shui, and my grandparents want to bury there too. And my parent even brought about this issue to
about
me.
you?
Yeah. Not long time ago, in thinking about, okay, your grandfather is there, and I want to be there too. In certain time, they would tell the kids they want to unified with their ancestors and family. It's very strong.
Yeah, it is strong, and it doesn't. Any generation it doesn't come out. It also creates a lot of problems. I mean,
How so,
inside,
yeah.
because when you were saying, what people think, especially our generation. Let's say the 20th and 30s,
Like the cognitive
40s.
dissonance between the
We're nomad
generations, or
culture already.
Yes,
like for
but you
generation
battle
like us.
with this strength which is inside you. You battle with this strength which is inside you, because you have a different life, and you, like you already said, the generation gaps,
the levels of mobility.
Yes, yeah. But you really want to get your life on the road. And you're living in Beijing. You move from your hometown, 2,000 kilometers away. You move to university in Shanghai, Beijing, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, wherever, Wuhan, best university in city in China.
Nice.
And you have a completely different life.
Sure.
You also meet a girl. You get married. You have a completely different life. Spring Festival, Chinese New Year, you have to go back to your hometown. You even don't want, you don't want to come back. But the strength, this heart is there. It's really there.
Yeah.
It is there. But you have to manage that. Yeah. And you have your parents. You take care of your parents. This is stronger than anything. So even the hardship you have in all those different lives developing, the strength is inside and stays inside. And this is such a phenomenal,
element.
Yeah, this is unbelievable.
Well, we excitedly went down a side street to the which was turned out to be great, actually, in my opinion. But we were starting to ask about what motivated you to start writing and sharing, and I was going to ask you what you learned from that process, because I mean, you're fairly well read and very visible as somebody putting content out about related to China. And so what I guess I'm curious your current state of thinking about it. I mean, what does it mean to you to do that, and where do you see that going possibly?
How I came there
is
actually it's a cross-cultural thing. Again, for yourself, it's a process, because anybody comes from a culture, and you get your values and norms from a culture,
right?
And you come in a different culture, and China is a very different culture. And the first phase what you have is comparison. You compare things, and sometimes you know it better than anybody else. I think it's a human thing.
Sure.
And suddenly you find out Chinese people are very stubborn.
They just want to agree that you're right. It's crazy.
But the most important phase is you get a conscious and you start opening your mind,
Yeah.
your ears. My Chinese, I never learned Chinese. My Chinese is very basic. I can make a conversation with the taxi driver, order my food, fight a little.
I had DD Chinese myself. Yeah.
Yeah, but I cannot make speeches or anything, and I can listen a little. So actually, what I found out that my other my other four senses started to be more sharper. You started to look more, you started to listen more, observe, smell, touch,
Taste.
and you also come to a conscious. You say, my God, that is actually very good how it's handled here.
Yeah.
And this is good. And these thoughts, wow, and it's a conscious, but it's a process of years. And then it's also a great sense of gratefulness that suddenly, wow, I feel very privileged that I'm being able to go through this process. And yes, I want to share that. I also want to give back that. And I think it's very important also today with all the cultures, the civilizations actually coming more and more on top of each other. That it's very necessary that we have a better understanding.
Well,
What do you find most difficult or challenging for doing this? Yeah, carrying out your mission at this moment.
The most challenging for me is staying objective.
Okay.
I want to bite my teeth sometimes and shout my own opinion. But it doesn't make sense. My opinion is not important. The reality is important because everybody sees a different reality. Facts between brackets, or observations. Try to bring them as objective as possible. And to create an understanding. And anybody can make their own mind.
Right.
The problem is that in many cases, the facts are not presented well, or in a different tone.
Many times our opinions only, no facts.
Yes, it's a kind of opinion, and this is what I would like to avoid. Let the people make their own minds, make up their own minds, and try to. That's why I try to simplify and try to just make simple messages or posts or articles and go. Or I have a series of different China where I go deeper in articles, but I state the facts. What is happening? Where does it come from? And like I said, the most difficult is trying to stay objective and don't fall in a discussion when that discussion would not make any sense. Because if the minds are already set, there's no need to discuss.
That's beautifully said. Well, do you have any last thoughts to share with the audience? And otherwise, we will direct you to your socials and your internets and where people can find out more informations. Do you have a last question?
Yeah. I saw these words on your LinkedIn profile. I thought these words. The real source of satisfaction and success in today's global dynamic jungle is not to blur your spirit and ambition solely by traditional points of view and conservative concepts. Let your unbiased and unprejudiced observations, imagination, and faith grasp the endless opportunities and develop your own humble presence and happiness in this new world.
That's beautiful.
Is that from you?
Yeah, that's from me. That's
wow.
It's a fantastic.
I was asking for the question.
That was on your
how
profile.
I feel. Actually, maybe it's nice written, but that's how I feel.
Yeah.
The diversity that I have had a chance and still have a chance and hopefully will have the chance that I can experience really a different society, also different thoughts. And being able to compare, and not compare, but relate it with each other and try to connect with each other. That makes you such a humble person. It's you, and you have to be humble. You have to be humble.
Your words perfectly summarize what we're doing here and perfectly demonstrate the meaning and purpose of this show. I think we really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And I'm humble that I can be here.
Where can we find you online? We'll put the links in the show notes, but where should people try to find you?
I think
to
LinkedIn.
Find your blog?
LinkedIn, I share a lot of posts, and I have my own website, which I started last year, 5eyes.china.com. And the best is always just come to China, and you are welcome to see our school.
And just to find you, fantastic.
We can have a walk in the park, which is adjacent, the Tungzhou Canal Park, which is the very beautiful park.
You'll be our host.
That's the best way to learn China.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, that's the show this week. Don't forget to visit HowChinaWorksPodcast.com to find out more about this show, our other show guests, to reach out and contact Yingying or I with any questions or comments. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next week.